Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports, joining us right now. And Brandon, I promised, hey, Dad, that we wouldn't talk about conference realignment. We're going to talk about football with you. That's what you cover anyway, at least most of the time when you're not having to sit in on Board of Regents meetings and stuff. But let's start with this. The Pac-12, in the midst of all this chaos and everybody getting out of town, they are seemingly the most interesting conference in college football. Maybe a tad hyperbole in there, but man, what a fascinating league to be falling apart.
Yeah, it's probably the best it's been in a decade. You know, never mind the incredible quarterbacks. There's like 8 top-tier quarterbacks coming back in the league this year, and a couple of new ones, including Shedeur Sanders at Colorado, that could be superstars. But there's some good defenses going to be played out there. And Oregon State might have the best offensive line in the entire country. They've got 3 all Pac-12 players coming back, 4 of 5 returning starters up front, a group that protected the quarterback last year, and an offense that did very well in scoring 32 points per game, but they lack the explosive firepower in the vertical passing game, and they seemingly have gotten a way to improve that by adding DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. And that's a team that was picked 4th in the conference that won 10 games last year. I think there's an incredible amount of talent coming back and potential there for the Pac-12 to finally get a team back into the playoff for the first time since 2016. And, what's one heck of a way to go off into the night as that league crumbles and goes away in December.
And then from a player perspective, I mean, the quarterbacks in the Pac-12 are incredible. I think the Pac-12 and the ACC this year, there's so many great quarterbacks there. Obviously, Caleb Williams, Drake May. Is Penix your number 3 there, or is there another guy you like more than him?
I love Michael Penix. And to me, I think he's number 2 in the Pac-12 behind Caleb Williams. I think Bo Nix is going to take a little bit of a step back this year with a new offensive coordinator, just because I think Kenny Dillingham very much understood what made Nix go. Just some simple, small tweaks that he made when he went in there, whether it's some half rollouts and doing some things to get him on the move after the snap. But you look elsewhere, Arizona State's going to have, I think, a pretty good quarterback when all the dust settles there. UCLA with Dante Moore, the true freshman phenom who comes in there, is, I think, ranked number 3 or number 4 in our quarterback rankings, and is one of the top signees in UCLA history, battling for a starting spot there in that dynamic Chip Kelly offense. So there's guys out there that we're not even really talking about that, if they were starting, say, in the SEC, at, say, an Ole Miss or something like that, we'd be saying that, they were kind of in the middle of the league. But down in the Pac-12 country, they're probably in the bottom half of that league.
And then sticking with quarterbacks, I saw an article today from 24/7 from Clint Brewster. He ranked every quarterback in the Power 5. His number 1 guy in the SEC was Jaden Daniels. That's the first-team All-SEC quarterback. I don't have an issue with that. His second quarterback in the conference was Devin Leary. How surprised were you by that? Is that? Do you think that highly of Leary?
I like Leary, but the injuries, and also I think what you see is what you get from him because he's been in the game for so long. I don't see him as being that type of guy who goes to the NFL and has that big, long success. But listen, I'm not an evaluator of talent beyond college football. But, looking elsewhere across the SEC, it is difficult to kind of go, who are the guys that project as NFL quarterbacks that are going to have some longevity there? I think there's a lot of excitement to be had there at Kentucky because you've got Liam Cohen coming back to call plays, Devin Leary. They're going to have a strong running game. The offensive line seemingly is always up to snuff and up to getting things done. But, how about this? I'll throw this name out there just because I get the feeling that he's going to surprise some folks, and that's Graham Mertz at Florida. I mean, Florida still has not announced him as a starter. And I know Billy Napier's still throwing it around there here in this last week or so that, hey, we still don't know who the starter is. We might decide after our first scrimmage here. But I heard good things about Mertz this past spring, despite what we saw on TV in that spring game. And I continue to hear that in this offseason. And I think that while Florida is not going to be a team that wins 10 games this year, quarterback play, I think, is going to be much more stable and better there with Graham Mertz this season.
You've got a couple of, whether they're real competitions or not, I guess is going to be the question here. In the state of Alabama, is it, so far of what you heard going on in camp there at Auburn and in Tuscaloosa, is it as simple as the transfers are the guys, or is there true, actual competition there that is still up for grabs?
My understanding is that Alabama, Jalen Milroe has a slight edge right now. Started a couple of games, as you know, last year in place of Bryce Young when he was injured. You know, they brought in Tyler Buchner from Notre Dame, who followed, of course, Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator. And, you know, there was word coming out in this summer that Buchner may have actually been the third-team guy on a lot of books there. And the response by Jalen Milroe has been fantastic, I've been told, and has really done a good job, one, with his body, but also in digesting the offense and making good decisions out there here early in preseason camp. So I think he's got the slight edge right now. And then at Auburn, I think it's Peyton Thorne's job to lose the transfer from Michigan State until you start seeing something else. You know, Harold Grenier, I might be mispronouncing his last name because honestly I've never really had to say it, but I got a note this morning saying that he has been pretty good in the preseason camp there so far, but they really want to see what he's going to be able to do now in a scrimmage and the potential of maybe going live with him when they do their first scrimmage here. Maybe this week, as early as this weekend.
Didn't plan on sticking with quarterbacks this long, but it's just an interesting topic because there's so many questions in the SEC and then there's so many talented guys outside the conference. Let's look at Georgia and Carson Beck, number one team in the nation in the USA Today poll that came out yesterday. That's a big step for a team, you know, that's loaded everywhere, but we don't know a lot about their quarterback. Is it just sort of, quote, too big to fail there at Georgia?
I think that's the thinking from a lot of folks. And I've been saying, I keep waiting to hear stuff from camp there or even this past spring and summer about Carson Beck just made like 5 tremendous throws here you just wouldn't believe in camp. And I haven't heard anything like that. And I do wonder about the offense, if that thing is going to continue to be as explosive and as creative, especially in utilizing Brock Bowers. I mean, goodness gracious, guys, getting to see a tight end running jet sweeps. I love it. You know, what are they going to do to put those best playmakers out there to take advantage of them? And with the new OC and dealing with that, you know, what's that going to look like? And I think it's one of those situations we're just not going to know until they get out on the field because, you know, it's almost like, you know, I'm not saying Georgia's the dream team, but it's almost like the dream team when they were practicing for the Barcelona games, you know, where they're practicing or whatever, and, you know, they could just kind of have a warm-up, you know, in a scrimmage because they know what they kind of have, right? And then behind closed doors and the cameras are gone, they just have some fun. They actually get after each other. I just don't think we quite know what to expect there because they're not really showing much right now in preseason camp or for that matter this past spring.
Week 1, we've got LSU, Florida State. Week 2, we've got Alabama, Texas. We all know those games are all circled on everybody's calendar. What's a game in the first 2-3 weeks that we're not talking about enough that you've got an eye on?
Well, I'll start week 1 and Thursday night game, Florida at Utah. I think people are talking about it, but I think it's huge because that's a game that could put, you know, Utah obviously in the automatic hole and trying to get in a playoff spot, but also could help Florida suddenly be a contender in the SEC East and be a step ahead where they were last year at this time because Utah went in there and beat them in the swamp. That crowd is going to be nuts on a Thursday night in week 1 in Utah. It's probably one of the top 2 or 3 student sections of all college football. It's going to be insane there on Thursday night, with that being the only big game in week 1 on a Thursday night. It's going to be fantastic to watch, and that's the game I'm really looking forward to seeing, and hopefully maybe fly out to and get to see live.
Brandon, great stuff as always. A nice break away from the conference realignment stuff. I hope you can find a way to cover some actual football here soon. But we appreciate your time. Great stuff as always, and we'll talk to you again down the line.
All right, guys. See ya.
That's Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports, National College Football writer on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go at the home
team. It's like jumping in a pool. It's just like jumping in the pool, man. I shook off all the realignment crap. I'll say it. And just I got refreshed right there by my friend Brandon Marcello. That was lovely.
Yeah, we